Hello my friends, and how are you doing? Today I'm going to do a reaction to the Ilya Sutskever honorary speech of the University of Toronto, where he got an honorary degree. He's an ex-employee of OpenAI and he talks about the future of AI. I'm not 100% agreeing with what he's saying, so I want to give my 5 cents to that. Let's get started.
Right now, we all live in the most unusual time ever. And this is something that people might say often, but I think it's actually true this time.
Yeah, I think also people say that often because it's kind of often true. It's always true when new technology comes around. It's the biggest change we've ever seen so far because it's the newest change we've ever seen so far. So has always happened with especially very disruptive new technology. But we've seen a lot of that in recent decades, right?
And the reason it's true this time is because of AI, right? Obviously. I mean, from what I hear, the AI of today has already changed what it means to be a student by a pretty considerable degree.
While that's a good argument, I also want to say that every past technology that has an impact on learning, an impact of information transformation, information keeping, has had that same effect. For example, written text, printing of books, the computers, internet, they all had a massive impact. Even photography had a huge impact on how we can store information, not just in the form of, instead of sketching the things we find, actually taking photos of what we find, but also microfiches where you can copy books on these little like film plaques, and then you can look it up with these kind of readers. They have a lens in them. Of course, now everything is digital, but all of that had a huge impact on how we learn and also how we communicate with each other. And of course, other tools like the calculator, stuff like that.
That's what I sense, and I think it's true. But of course, the impact of AI goes beyond that. What happens to the kind of work we do? Well, it's starting to change a little bit in some unknown and unpredictable ways. And
again, I would say that is something that has happened a lot in the past, especially unpredictable ways. Every new technology is unpredictable because we haven't used it yet, and also it hasn't brought out its potential yet. So we don't actually know where and how it's going to be used, and it is disruptive. It's going to change a lot. But in my mind, what I see is not that the jobs all fall away. What I see is that new industries are created, and with that a lot new jobs. And my proof for that is, even though today with computers, with digitalization, with all these processes we have through the internet, fast processing, fast communication, where we can do everything from booking a flight to ordering a new car or house, or even dating online, it still has created more jobs than ever have existed before computers or the internet.
Some work may feel it sooner, some work might feel it later. With today's AI, you can go on Twitter and you can look at what AI can do and what people say. And you might feel a little bit of that. You wonder, hey, which skills are useful, which ones will be less useful. So you got these questions going on.
You have to ask yourself, where's AI going to be in the future, and is what I'm learning right now going to be a job that is there in the future? Think about, with the potential that we see so far with AI and what you do so far with your job, how can you mix that together to improve your skill or create something that doesn't exist yet with AI to be, first of all, having a job in the future, but maybe also creating a completely new product or starting off a completely new industry. It doesn't mean you have to be Elon Musk to start something big. You can also start something big in a small way. Think, for example, about the concept of a co-working space. It's just an empty hall with a couple of desks and some coffee, and someone said, hey, that's a good idea because people need a workplace, but they often don't have money for a full office. So here we go, we just patch it together, and that's a completely new industry that revolutionized how the workspace is seen, and also of course, created a completely new form of entrepreneurship with the startups and with the seed funding rounds, with the pitches that happen inside of the co-working spaces.
And so you can say that the current level of challenge is how will it affect work and our careers. But the real challenge with AI is that it's really unprecedented and really extreme, and it's going to be very different in the future compared to the way it is today. Like, we've all seen AI, we've all spoken to a computer, and a computer has spoken back to us, which is a new thing. Computers would not do this in the past, but now they do. So you speak to a computer, and it understands you, and it speaks back to you, and it also does it in voice, and it writes some code. It's pretty crazy. But there are so many things it cannot do as well, and it's so deficient. So you can say it still needs to catch up on a lot of things.
For all the praise and hype that AI is getting, especially from the AI companies, so far I have not seen a single AI that is actually good at what it is supposed to do. It can do magical things, amazing things, disruptive things, but all of these things need experts in the background because it only gets you so far. And even if you would say, yeah, but that's just now because it's still in the baby steps, and I would absolutely agree to that, we cannot tell if this is going to improve in the future, but what we can tell right now is that the better a model is for all of these kinds of different purposes, the bigger it is and the more energy it needs, the more computing power it needs. And this means there might be the potential for AI to be absolutely amazing, but there might also be physical and financial limits to that, where at a certain point AI might be good enough to replace us, but at the same time be either as expensive or more expensive than us doing it, or even a physical limit from the computing power where it simply can't be done.
But it's evocative. It's good enough that you can ask yourself, you could imagine, okay, fine. In some number of years, some people say it's in 3, some people say it's in 5, 10, numbers are being thrown around. It's a bit hard to predict the future. But slowly but surely, or maybe not so slowly, AI will keep getting better. And the day will come when AI will do all the things that we can do.
I find that highly speculative. And I don't agree to that, especially to the time frame. It might be correct. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball either. But when we think about the history of computers, or the history of the internet, or the history of visual effects, or the history of 3D graphics, what that told us is at the beginning, people had extremely high hopes where it will be, what it will do for us, how it will change everything in our society, and so on. And it did. All of that, but in a completely different way than we expected, and not at all in the way that was promised or that visionary was talking about. Because what the so-called visionaries usually do is they look at the process we have right now and they say this exact process is going to be replicated and then replaced by a computer. Well, that is not exactly the case for 2 reasons. First of all, society is moving on, so we have other tasks, we have other expectations, we have other processes on how we do things. So doing the exact same thing doesn't cut it anymore because it's already outdated at that point, so it doesn't really help you to be able to do that. But then also the second part is that in most cases, the solutions we found with computers have been vastly different from our expectations. For example, look at social media, look at the internet. Now, you would have thought when we have free access to all of the information that they want to learn all of that, or would they rather watch a cat movie and someone dancing for no reason in the middle of the street? And the second one is more likely and way more successful, and nobody could predict that in the future, that instead of doing the most amazing things we could with the internet, we would actually watch cat videos because it's just more fun. And we would use computers to order some new socks and to binge watch on Netflix. It went in kind of like a different direction because culture is a very big part of how we use technology. The pure technological potential is just that, a potential. But if we want that, if we need that, if we ever realize that, is not clear. And often we can, but we don't want to because we want something else instead.
Not just some of them, but all of them. Anything which I can learn, anything which any one of you can learn, the AI could do as well. How do we know this, by the way? How can I be so sure? How can I be so sure of that? The reason is that all of us have a brain, and the brain is a biological computer.
I don't believe that even for a minute. Because, first of all, it reduces the brain to a computer function, which is not at all the limits of what a brain can do. But then also it kind of says that all of our intelligence, our understanding comes from our brain, and we need nothing else. And a computer doesn't need anything else. So if a computer is smart or even super smart, it can figure out everything that we can figure out and even more than that because it has that intelligence. So intelligence is the key to everything. You can do everything if you're just intelligent enough. We know that this is absolutely not true even in our real life examples because, first of all, a lot of people who are very, 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 very good at stuff are at the same time not that intelligent. They are not super high Q intelligent. Think about very skilled people in sports or in music or in art or any kind of industry. Just because they can run fast, just because they can play a violin very good, doesn't mean that they also are very good at calculus or learning languages or anything like that, right? Then also we have other people who are very, very, very smart and they can calculate all kinds of things. They can come up with the most amazing ideas. Doesn't mean that they are good at other things in life. So there is not just the brain, there's also the body. And this connection between the brain and the body is already something that is very much required for you to understand the information and understand the world that we are living in. A classic example I bring for that is if a person was born blind, you can try every imaginable way to explain to them what colors look like. And the brain of them is certainly able to understand what colors are on its own. The problem is they have never seen a color. They have no reference to that. So they can't really know what a color is because it just doesn't exist in their reality. They have no connection to that. And this is why you already need a body for that information. Now, this is only two parts, the brain and the body. But then comes also our culture part, our humanity, what makes us human. And this is the really complex part about that. Because first of all, a lot of what we do in our cultures doesn't make any sense at all. We just do it because we feel it feels right. And of course, at the same time, a lot of people feel like it doesn't feel right. So they are against this. This is why our culture is constantly changing, constantly evolving. Not over decades, not over generations, but on a daily basis. Something that might be okay today might be completely outdated by tomorrow. For example, an internal joke might be cool today, might be completely lame tomorrow. Things like that. It changes really fast and there is not a reason for that. Even we can't really give a reason for what a lot of stuff and why a lot of stuff is happening in our life, let alone a computer. Now, also, even if you would take the most skilled people in our society, and we have a lot of them in our society, look at how many masterpieces they actually create and if they can do it on a whim and just like that. And they can't. even though they have a brain and they have a body and they have lived in the culture and they created a masterpiece, so they went through the process, even then they can't tell you why or how it worked. It just worked because here's the next thing. We are a collective, not just right now, but also over time. So what works in our society is dependent on what millions and billions of people independently do, but at the same time it leads to a result that is then shining back, reflecting back on these different societies, cultures and subcultures, even though they might not know why, or even every of them individually have a different reasoning for why that happened. So intelligence isn't a magical key to unlock the universe. It's one ingredient, but one amongst many ingredients.
That's why. We have a brain. The brain is a biological computer. So why can't a digital computer, a digital brain, do the same things? This is the one-sentence summary for why AI will be able to do all those things. Because we have a brain, and the brain is a biological computer. And so you can start asking yourselves, what's going to happen? What's going to happen when computers can do all of our jobs, right? Those are really big questions. Those are dramatic questions. And right now, like, you start thinking about it a little bit, you go, gosh, that's a little intense. But it's actually only part of the intensity.
That is an interesting point. And let's say that happens. Let's say AI is going to be that good. It can replace every job, which on a certain degree doesn't make sense, because a lot of jobs actually need the human touch because we want it to be done by humans. But even if we would agree that that would be possible, we wouldn't legally and culturally allow it. And that's an important part. And this is actually why you need to vote. This is actually why you need to hold your politicians responsible. Because they have a responsibility to create an environment for their community to be livable, right? So even today, we have a lot of technology that could replace jobs, but we keep these jobs around. Why? Because we are a society, because we have empathy, because we need our economy to work. So if you would replace every single person right now, you could replace, there wouldn't be any economy because people just don't have enough money to buy the stuff. And why would you build a company that produces products for people who can't afford products? And this is why we keep jobs around. This is why we adjust the wages. This is why we have protection for the workers. We have retirement, we have vacation, we have sick days, we have all of that to keep a working society that is working in the sense of its functioning as a society, as an economy, so it can stick around. So at no point in our future would it make any sense to 100% completely replace the workforce with AI and with computers and robots, whatever you want to call that. Even if you would say, yeah, but the companies want it because it's cheaper. Is it cheaper? Do we have a proof for that? We don't even know if that is true. Also, we do have a lot of processes today that are shipped to countries like India or China or other parts of the world because, and you have certainly heard that, it's cheaper to produce it there. Now, why is it cheaper to produce it there if we can build machines to do that job? Well, the reason for that is because the upkeep and repair of a machine and also the upgrading of a machine is actually more expensive than someone doing it as a person in that country. Even though I don't agree with the work conditions they have. I don't agree with the low payment they have. I'm just talking about the reality of the situation, that just because a machine can do it doesn't mean a machine can do it better or quicker or cheaper.
Because what's going to happen? What will we, the collective we, want to use these AIs for? Do more work, grow the economy, do R&D, do AI research, so then the rate of progress will become really extremely fast, for some time at least. These are such extreme things. These are such unimaginable things.
The R&D, the research, the science is certainly going to be speeding up with AI because it already showed very good results in that. The reason why it can show good results in that, because it's based on, for example, the physical laws that don't really change, or the laws of mathematics that don't really change. There is no ambiguity as it is in culture. So for science to do a million tests that are repetitive and doing the same thing and trying to figure out the results, AI can be good at that. I'm also agreeing that this might only be for an amount of time until we run again into the physical or cost problem where AI has sped up the research a ton, and then at a certain point the models become so complex, use way too much computing power, and then it's going to be slowing down again. But of course, what this also means, and that might be a cultural risk for our society, is that things develop and improve so fast that society can't be keeping up with that. And that is a problem that we already see right now, where you have a lot of these back to the root movement, where you feel that people are overwhelmed with the technology, with the progress. They don't understand anymore what is going on because it's just progressing so fast. And maybe they also don't want that.
So right now I'm trying to pull you into that a little bit, into this headspace of this really extreme and radical future that AI creates. But it's also very difficult to imagine. It's very, very difficult to imagine. It's very difficult to internalize and to really believe on an emotional level. Even I struggle with it. And yet the logic seems to dictate that this very likely should happen. So what does one do in such a world? You know, there is a quote which is like this, which goes like this. It says, "You may not take interest in politics, but politics will take interest in you." So the same applies to AI many times over. And in particular, I think that
is an absolutely great point, that AI will certainly change the world no matter if you like it or not. Of course, you have certain life choices if you allow it into your private life or if you keep it out. But overall, in our world, it will certainly have a huge impact. The problem, and one of the problems we're facing right now that's actually very difficult, is when technology that is very powerful meets with people, especially politicians, who are very power hungry. And sadly, right now, we have a lot of those in charge, and a lot of those don't make great decisions about their power hungriness and about the power that they got for themselves. So that is a very big risk. And I want to give you an example of something that is low tech and still had a huge impact. And that is, for me, also a proof why it is not always technology that is changing the world. It's what we do with the technology that is changing the world. And what that is train tracks. And you would think train tracks aren't that big, they are not that important. How can they really change the world? Well, the thing is, before train tracks, we couldn't have massive wars on a global scale. Now, the reason for that is because it was simply not possible to move the troops fast enough to the different locations, and by that have also the logistics, because it's not just moving the troops, it's supplying the troops that is the problem. So in the past, we couldn't do that, and because of that, wars used to be more local and smaller. But when the train tracks came around, suddenly you could build train tracks to the front and then send everything you want to the front in a short time, and especially with rested soldiers and with the equipment intact, because you just load it on a train and the train is then running. The people don't have to ride or walk there or do anything else, and that was a huge impact on how power hungry people with ill set goals have changed the history and our society and the surface of our planet, because they abused this new technology. Instead of feeding the world, instead of helping the world and spreading supplies, they spread soldiers, ammunitions, and war, and that was the wrong decision. And AI certainly has a potential for that, and this is why, again, you need to vote and you need to keep your politicians responsible. When something is good for the world, it is also good for you. So when you think about others, you also think about yourself. But thinking about others creates the environment that enables you to also be safe, happy, and well fed yourself. So start to think about others more and keep the politicians responsible about that, especially also with AI, because even AI has a lot of shortcomings in the areas of sniffing out your data, of intruding and impacting your private life. Already AI has showed that potential to censor us, to limit us, to spy on us in our actions, even in our private time inside of gaming. Now, I'm not against using AI against bullies or hackers, but at the same time, when I play a game in my free time, do I really want to have everything I say or chat be controlled by an AI and sent back to the mothership? I'm not sure about that.
By simply using AI and looking at what the best AI of today can do, you get an intuition. You get an intuition. And as AI continues to improve in 1 year, in 2 years, in 3 years, the intuition will become stronger. And a lot of the things that we are talking about now, they will become much more real. They'll become less imaginary. In the end of the day, no amount of essays and explanations can compete with what we see with our own senses, with our own two eyes.
I would rather phrase this differently, to be honest. I would say that the potentials shrink down to the actual things that are possible and also that we have an interest in. So yes, the future makes things more clear, but it makes it more clear because we rooted out everything that didn't work or we didn't like and that didn't have any success. So that is where basically a vision becomes a reality, because every other vision that has existed before that was just gone. And the best example for that is the shape of our smartphones. In the past, we had tons and tons of smartphones. It's my cute kitty here. We had tons of different shapes of smartphones and ideas of what a smartphone could be. And now we arrived at this shape and it seems to be the perfect shape. And yeah, we just go with it because it's basically built for our hand, for our palm, for our fingers, and how we interact with that. And when you think back at the many shapes we had, these are also the many potentials we see for AI right now. A lot of them will fall flat and then some will be super good. But I personally think they will impact society and our future in a very positive way and push us and move us forward to have an even better life.
And especially with AI, the very smart, super intelligent AI of the future, there will be very profound issues about making sure that they say what they say and not pretend to be something else. And I'm really condensing a lot into a small amount of information here.
That is a huge potential and a huge danger from AI to influence us without us realizing we are being influenced, or that the information seems to be completely correct but actually is wrong and we can't tell, especially when information becomes too complex. However, again, I want to bring the point of culture and acceptance of new technology, because I'm very certain that when the technology turns out to be bad for us overall and we cannot fix these kind of problems, that we will simply abandon this technology and say, well, it was a good try, we didn't like it, and now it's just gone again.
But overall, by simply looking at what AI can do, not ignoring it, when the time comes, that will generate the energy that's required to overcome the huge challenge that AI will pose. And the challenge that AI poses, in some sense, is the greatest challenge of humanity ever. And overcoming it will also bring the greatest reward. And in some sense, whether you like it or not, your life is going to be affected by AI to a great extent. And so looking at it, paying attention, and then generating the energy to solve the problems that will come up. That's going to be the main thing. And I'll stop here.
We have to know, we have to figure out in the future if we even can overcome these problems. Will AI ever be better in giving us accurate, trustful results that are really good and better than that of a person? But AI might never be good enough to actually be on our level. When you just talk to the AI and, for example, it will make the perfect software for you that you wanted to have, or the perfect house that you wanted to build, and you don't need an architect, or you don't need a designer, and you don't need a programmer to do all these kind of things, AI might never be there, right? We don't know. It would be cool if it would. And by the way, this brings me to one more point. Our interest is always evolving. Our taste is always evolving. But also, a very important thing about that is we humans are extremely self-centered. We like to see what other people do. We like what other people come up with. We love personal stories and real emotions. And this is why when something is, and this is one of the biggest factors ever, if something has authenticity, it has reality to it, then we love it even more, especially if there is a tragic story behind that, a deep life story that we can connect to it, and then it is expressed with emotion. This touches our heart. We can connect, we feel, and we fall in love with that product. Now, even though you can maybe at some point create a similar or equal thing with a computer, if the source isn't there, it might not mean the same thing to you. And we can tell because we have seen things in the past that have been amazing to a lot of people, and they absolutely loved it, and it was really, really big. And then we figured out, well, there's something off about that person. There's something off about that story. It was a really good story, but it wasn't true at all. Or that person behind that story wasn't a good person at all. And suddenly it all fell apart. Suddenly it all dropped. Because if it's real or not real, if it's human in the source or not human in the source, makes day and night difference to us. So with all the potential that AI has in the future, my personal guess is AI will work alongside of us. We will limit it to whatever we feel like its potential should be and integrate it in our culture in any way we think it's good. And most of the time, this is not going to be replacing humans. It's going to be entertaining and selling things better, because that is what most of economy is about. Think about most of the things you buy and consume. Are they built in a purely purpose-fulfilling way, or are they built in a way that is nice to you, that you love and you enjoy to use it? And this is why you chose one product over another product. So emotion is way more important to us than functionality. And like I said multiple times through this reaction, hold your politicians responsible for your future, but also for the future of your kids and everybody around that. Because everybody around that creates the world we need to be safe for ourselves and for our children. Thanks for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed that, and see you soon. Bye.